Welcome to the summit, Know Yourself Simply as This. And I have the pleasure to introduce you to Amit Goswami. Hi, Amit.
Hi, Susan.
And you have been a professor of physics for 30 years at the University of Oregon. And then you've written many books, mainly about quantum physics and the whole quantum world. And you have also been in some movies, and you have also established some transformative education online, which is about quantum health, quantum spirituality, quantum psychology, like the quantum activism world. And so it's all very exciting, and I'm thrilled to have you here. And so I have some of your books that I've read. Here is the very famous one that was kind of the beginning of it, the Selfaware Universe. And it's about how consciousness creates the material world. And I also have this quantum creativity that's also very exciting, and here Quantum Doctor. And yeah, they're all great. And I just read your very new book that's just 4 days old, the Quantum Brain. So it's all quantum. So guess what my first question is going to be? What is quantum? What does that mean?
Wonderful question to begin the discussion about awareness and consciousness. Quantum physics is the physics of possibility. So how did that begin? It began with the study of submicroscopic objects like electrons and photons, objects that are elementary particles of light. Initially, nobody expected that quantum objects would be any different than Newtonian objects. But what happened was just astounded everyone. It turns out, initially there was a lot of conflict, lot of difficulties, paradoxes that was raised against what quantum objects may be. But when the equation was discovered, physics is very mathematical. Physics before mathematics cannot state very definitely what is going on, but mathematics often is very helpful to resolve the paradoxes. Mathematics showed that the quantum objects are waves, but not waves like we see in physical space and time. They are waves of possibility. What that means is that they become actuality only after we measure. This very intriguing fact that it takes an observer to measure before we actually can manifest the objects into space and time. So where were the objects before they were manifest? They must be in a domain outside of space and time. And then Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen showed that this domain has astounding property. Here, objects can interact faster than the speed of light, which means that objects are interacting instantly without using any signal. The relativity theory says that all objects communicate in space and time with signal. So here, signal-less communication is the signature of this domain. We call this non-locality, and material objects cannot have non-locality. So something non-local must be mediating the interaction. This non-local field has been called quantum field. My special contribution to quantum physics and its understanding that I wrote about in Selfaware Universe is that it is consciousness. Consciousness, which is the ground of all being. Material objects are possibility waves of this consciousness, and consciousness chooses out of all the possibilities that are offered to it the actual event. That's how the world of manifest begins.
Aha. So it's consciousness and then the world. You could say the world appears in the consciousness.
That's right. There is no world outside of our consciousness.
Yes. And that's also like your books, the Self-Aware Universe is like the universe that we see or we can measure and that we live in is actually self-aware in consciousness.
Yes, and the crucial fact to understand that this consciousness is not outside of us. This consciousness is working through us. The most crucial line in the book, Self-Aware Universe, is that the universe is self-aware, but through us. Through us. We are very important component. We human beings and living beings in general are very important component of the conscious self-aware universe.
Yeah, so a mountain or a tree is not self-aware.
Right. It is not that consciousness is acting independently as a dual agent like religions sometimes posit. God separate from the world.
And what about animals? Would they be self-aware, or it just
Animals are conscious. Animals have self-awareness, but the self-awareness processes with feelings, with vitality, vital energy. So their processing is very simplistic processing. They don't have mental capacity. Although chimpanzees have a little bit of mental capacity, but lower animals, even dogs and cats, which are our pets, and therefore we know that they have consciousness. Anybody who has pet can vouch for it. They can communicate with us, but only with feeling. So that distinction makes them a bit different. And this is why people have been so reluctant to admit. Only recently, even strong scientists are admitting what field workers have been saying for a long time, that of course animals are conscious. Lower animals are not self-conscious. They're not aware that there is self. Lower animals, like if you go to fish, then that's a lower animal. But any mammal, as soon as you have the mammalian brain, it has the ability to be self-aware.
But it won't have the thoughts, because it's not like an animal will look in the mirror and think, oh, I'm an elephant, or I'm a frog, right? Or I'm a monkey. Whereas we can look in the mirror and we can say, oh, I'm a human.
Well, dolphins, they are, dolphins have a very large brain. So the only reason dolphins are not as versatile in their consciousness as we are is because they are aquatic. Their water environment prevents them from developing a language. Otherwise, they process with mind. A dolphin research makes it very clear that dolphins process with a lot of mental aspects, except they prefer feeling, because how they communicate is the ESP without signals, and ESP works better with feelings.
Mm-hmm.
You already know that. I mean, all women have more capacity of feeling than men because of self-consciousness in the heart. And therefore, you know that whenever you are feeling, you have more access to non-local connection with another, such as empathy, whereas people who are into thinking, they cannot empathize. They can sympathize with their brain, but not empathize. Empathy is a very special non-local capacity. And anyone who has swum with dolphin, I have never done it, but I have friends who have done it, they say that it's a unique experience because you feel that you are in extrasensory connection with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah, and so we have this very unique brain, and we can take in this whole world, or we can project this whole world, and space and time and everything. And it's very unique, this human brain and heart and the whole human system, actually. And so what is it like? We seem to get lost in our own humanity, and we don't know who we really are. Maybe because it's so complex, we get confused. So how do we get to know ourselves, our true nature?
Well, the brain creates a human condition that does make it very difficult. I will confess that before I went into writing this book and the research that was necessary, I really did not realize that how much the brain contributes to our humanness in the form of forgetfulness. But the brain was made for that. You see, the mechanism which creates our self-consciousness in conjunction with the brain, that mechanism creates only a temporary forgetfulness. I call that mechanism tangled hierarchy. It is necessary, it's like an illusory mechanism. You create a temporary illusion, but it's only very temporary. If that was the way that brain acted, only that, then we could go in and out of that oneness. And the consequence would be that the world would not be what it was like, because people would only experiencing the world separate from itself momentarily and then go back to oneness, because oneness is wonderful to be. So the way the world is created then is to create another stage of forgetfulness. The Buddhists discovered this already. It's called dependent co-arising. The world of objects arise codependently with the subject that is experiencing it. So the subject becomes conditioned as the objects take on conditioned forms of meaning. This is the way the world arises. And the brain gives that mechanism. So brain causes the forgetfulness, the mechanisms of the brain. Fortunately, there are signatures. So the brain scientists, they have now given us enough information to figure it out. So what happens is that the brain produces a self-experience in the moment. Mystics talk about it. This is the present-centered moment. All mystics talk about it. Dalai Lama talks about it. All the poets talk about it. T.S. Eliot, Rabindranath Tagore, they all talk about this present-centered, this moment. So that's one kind of self we have. And then we have the ego, where we are almost forgetful that we have been one with each other. So that forgetfulness is produced by the processes in the brain, a process which creates a pre-conscious. So we have this quantum self, we have the ego, and the two are divided by that twilight zone of pre-conscious. That's what we penetrate when we meditate. So how to know ourselves? The answer really is just one simple answer: meditate and find out.
So meditate is because you kind of still, you become silent. You tune into that awareness or consciousness that you are. So that's where meditation has its place, you could say.
Yes, and it has to be done in a patient way. It's not going to happen overnight. In time, this pre-conscious is about a half a second of processing of memory. That's what produces the pre-conscious. So we have the present-centered experience in possibility. We seldom experience it. We do though, regularly we do. When we watch a sunset with awareness, when we watch a flower with awareness, when we see a loved one with awareness, we fall into quantum self. This is why we break up into a smile, we enjoy clearly. So we have those moments, but they're so fleeting, because then the brain processes for about half a second before we become fully aware of what is going on through the ego. But by that time, everything has become jaded in the conditioned form. We never see that alive form that we saw moments ago. And then flower is just a flower, sunset is just a sunset, your face is just another face, and we lose that vivid awareness of as if for the first time. That's the words from T.S. Eliot. As if see everything as if it is the first time. If we could, then the world would completely change, and we would completely change, because you would always feel that we are one with the world. I had this experience a few times, so I know from personal experience that it is so different. If anyone have that kind of experience, it is impossible to remain a materialist who believes that everything is matter.
Yeah. So it's like, because you also talk about creativity, like there's the inner creativity and the outer creativity, and it's almost like the inner creativity is when you're completely open to what is right here, right now, and so it's like you're completely open to the sunset, and it's like you melt, and it becomes the creativity of the sunset, or whatever happens in life. Yeah, and it's like a primary consciousness rather than a secondary consciousness, right? You talk about primary and
Yes.
secondary, whereas the secondary is always the thoughts about what happened. It's like a delay, right?
And that's why we do most of the time think about things like, when people talk about God, they talk more about their concepts of God, not the experience of that omnipresence, which is same as non-locality. That it is, what does it mean God is everywhere? It means that I am everywhere with everyone else. That consciousness of me being everyone with everywhere else is what we call godliness. That is the spirituality. That is what is divine. So this misunderstanding that God is as localized as we are in our ego, that misunderstanding has caused a lot of problem, and people still are perturbed by that misconception. And all this is created by the brain, because brain wants to create forgetfulness. So brain cannot be blamed. Brain is just a mechanism. Our challenge is to have the brain and then rewire it as necessary. So when we meditate, some of this rewiring starts happening. And when we engage in what inner creativity, that knowing, being aware, allowing the self itself to change with my meditative experience, do the meditation in a way that produces more awareness. I call it a process of do, be, do, be, do. Ordinarily, the ego's habit is to just do, do, do. Ego will bored otherwise. If we allow ourselves not to get bored, just accept the boredom in between. So do, and then boredom or relaxation, if you want to use a better word. Again, do, again, be. That produces the creative process. And then creative insights come, and they come suddenly, very quantum process. We call it quantum leap, such as when the electron jumps from one atomic orbit to another, it does not go through the intermediate space. So this quantum leap is a very special thing. It takes us beyond our mundane way of thinking about things. It gives us what we call insightful thought. This insightful thoughts is what allows us to get the incentive to change. For example, I can remake myself, but I cannot do it just by wishing it, because I don't know what myself is. Those insight makes it clear. Okay, here is the problem, and this is what you have to do. And then we do it, and we change. In this way, people can develop a loving self, whereas in the thinking, we don't know what love is. But in the moment of insight, it becomes clear to us that love is a connection that produces caring. So if you have an insight about love, that is made so clear that you have to connect somehow. And that connection will give me caring about a person that I'm trying to love. When you approach it this way, then intimate relationships become loving relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you talk about archetypes too. Archetypes, they're almost like it's deeper than our personality, our conditioned self, our character. Archetype is something that's before that, almost as a soul or something before we are born, or like a more subtle body. Yeah.
Yes. Archetypes are the epitome of the human experience. We have three kinds of subtle experiences. We are familiar with thinking. We are very familiar with thinking. We are actually thinking beings, more like, because of the brain, which allows us to think. But we also have feelings in the body. The Eastern psychologists discovered these feeling centers long time ago, millennia ago, in China, in India, in Middle East. They all talk about these feeling centers, heart and the navel particularly. So navel chakra is actually felt by some people. Even our ex-president, Donald Trump, talked about gut feeling. He was not kidding. There really is feelings in the gut, which can tell us something about things that we approve and not approve, believe or not believe. That's what muscle testing, by the way, is based. You try it. If you tell a lie, your muscles will go weak. So the gut knows what is lie and what is truth. That's the gut feeling. And then there's feelings in the heart, and thanks to women folk, we have never doubted that people have feelings in the heart, although men suppress feelings a lot, emotions a lot, and so most men don't have feelings in the heart except when they are children. And that's how, because it's a man-centered world mostly in all parts of the world. If you look at it, very few parts of the world has been women-centered. A few places are, but mostly it is men-centered, and men mostly process things with thinking. This is why the thinking part, the rational part, is so strong. Right now in America, rationality is a huge problem, because rationality is bound to produce irrationality. How do we keep rationality from its opposite, irrationality? Well, there is only one way. We transcend both. And the way to transcend is by the way of feelings, because then we get into the intuitive, the level that you mentioned, archetype. That's how we connect to archetypes. Archetypes like love, that's the one that is the most familiar archetype. But truth is another archetype. Look at what we have done to truth with rational mind, because rational mind cannot judge it. Truth is as poignant as lie sometimes. And when they're poignant, then I want to believe it. Like many followers of our ex-president still believe that he could not lose because their belief in him is so total. And then we think, how is that? They're just lying. No, it's not that simple, because our belief system blinds us. So it has to be understood in a total way. And when you understand, then this polarization that our country is seeing can be breached. Without understanding, these things cannot be breached. So when we talk about awareness, when you talk about the brain, you know, it goes very deep. Not lot of misunderstanding is there. We talk about misinformation constantly. We don't talk about misunderstanding. The misinformation is coming because we are not understanding the situation. Both sides are locked into misinformation.
Yeah.
Misinformation can be, major misconception today is that matter is everything. And our scientists are locked up in it. So when somebody says, I don't believe science, we cannot blame that person right away. Because yes, science has accepted a dogma and therefore lost its credibility. And then if somebody says, I don't believe science, we just cannot say that, oh, you are talking nonsense. No, there is a valid point here. Just like somebody says, I don't believe religion, we don't think much of it. Why? Because we accept the fact that, yes, religions have a lot of dogma. Similarly, people have to recognize that science and religion both really should be practiced without dogma. When religion is practiced without dogma, we have spirituality. When science is practiced without dogma, we get quantum science. So quantum science, this is why quantum science and spirituality are not antagonistic to one another. They can embrace each other and really can give us understanding.
Yeah. Yeah, and then because reality is also reality is not dogma, right? It's the possibility, the waves that collapses into this, and that's not dogma because it's ever changing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like the thoughts make it a dogma, right?
if we allow reality,
Yeah.
we went frozen for a while. Should we do that part?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. Did you disappear?
Okay, so allow reality. I think that's what you were trying to say. We have to allow reality to come to us without prejudice, without dogma, and then we don't have any confusion. The dogmas we create comes from the conditioned mind, from the ego. And here we can blame the brain a bit, because brain makes circuits of this dogma. Whenever we process with the brain feeds us this circuit. Brain is just a machine. It just feeds us the circuit because it cannot help it mechanically. So we have to sift through and penetrate. Penetrate how? Penetrate by meditation, penetrate by going into the pre-conscious. What cannot lie is our consciousness before the brain takes over, in that present-centered self. This is why mystics say that discover truth in the present-centered self. To discover that truth, we got to do certain procedures. Inner creativity and meditation are precisely those procedures. If we participate in that process, all of us can see the world in suchness. And then all confusion, all misunderstanding goes away.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like doing the inner work, you could say, then it reveals, truth is revealed, and then there won't be all that misunderstanding. Then it's like, oh yeah, I know this is my condition, my ego self, and I can look through it because I see it for what it is. Yeah.
Yes, 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 exactly. I see it like what it is. And that seeing the suchness of it, rational mind continuously debates that, because you cannot do that with rational mind. You have to go to that intuitive plane, the plane in which archetype speaks to us, and that is beyond the rational mind. That is beyond the rational mind because we are separated from that quantum self where everything is clearly understood because it's beyond rationality. It is our intuitive mind. And here is rational mind. Rational mind is a result of conditioning, result of belief systems, results of prejudices, results of dogma. But we can help the situation by eliminating belief systems, dogmas, prejudices as much as we can. As much as you can. Of course, unconscious dogmas, unconscious prejudices will continue to bother us for a while. But if we keep on to this process, eventually those unconscious prejudices reveal themselves. And as they reveal, I realize, oh, I have been this all along. I have had a prejudice. This is why people struggle. People are not aware, for example, we Americans are getting a lot of blame today, especially the white folks, that they had such a racist past. But one should not vilify this, because the point is that yes, unawareness happens. The culture was such that many things went unobserved. People are just unaware of it, or awareness was very little of it. Yes, they could see the pain of the other side, I'm sure. But the awareness that this other side is actually human beings, those awareness happens very little. It happened, of course, with Thomas Jefferson, with the great ones, Abraham Lincoln, but with others, not so clearly. And so what is the job they have to do? They have to be patient with themselves. They have to go inside and do this process that we are talking about. Then all of a sudden it becomes clear, oh, I have been racist all along. But then only we can drop racism. Otherwise, just saying it, that telling bad words will get rid of racism, this is not possible. This is why they fight. One side says, well, my racism is, I can express it. Donald Trump makes it valid to express my racism. But the other side says, no, you have to be politically correct. But this side knows that, no, you are also racist. This is the problem, no? Because one side is racist unconsciously, the other side is racist consciously. But both sides are not really working on inner creativity. They have to change the whole thing because this prejudice is so innate that, you probably don't know, but I was born and brought up in India. In India, people have the same prejudice. We are brown people, but some are born more white, some are born less white, and the whiteness is a big qualification for beauty. A woman is beautiful only if she is, relatively speaking, white. Where did that come from? In a brown country, it came from the fact that it is part of the unconscious. This is why we don't have the awareness. Unconsciously, everyone picks up the idea that white is more beautiful than dark. So this unconscious belief system has to be addressed. It cannot be addressed by conscious processing, by pretending that, okay, I resolved not to do this. That is good. I'm not suggesting that that is bad. That is a part of a good step. Overtly racist is really bad. Overtly sexist is really bad. These covert things are not as bad, but still, one must continue to meditate, continue to change the brain, the way that it is built up. The negative emotional circuits are automatically activated. A Stanford researcher, a Black woman actually, showed that yes, unconsciously, we all think that Black is more connected with violence. She proved it by experiment. Yeah. It's amazing. So unless we work on that, unless we make the unconscious conscious, how can we correct it? So quantum creativity is saying that yes, we have to be creative, we have to take quantum leap of awareness, then we can correct it.
Yeah.
Is that
actually
Americans are doing it.
So it's a lot about not believing all these thoughts we were told throughout our lives and all this collective that we grew up with and that was already installed in us maybe. And it's like a lot about seeing that for what that is, and that's not who you are, but it's there and that's okay. I'm allowed to be that. I just don't have to believe it, right? It's almost like I don't have to believe anything. Everything is just a story in a way. And just rest in oneself, more like resting in the archetypes we are, the love, the passion, the curiosity, or like little kids, little toddlers, like kind of they just playing and having fun, and they're very generous and they're very loving. And so it's almost like all these archetypes that they have, we kind of have forgotten about them, but we can just rest in ourselves and voila, they're right there, right?
Yeah. Very, very well expressed. Actually, it has to be allowed, and then only we see that we have been one all along. These prejudices are all superficial parts of belief systems, dogmas that separate us. But we really have to see that it's possible to expand consciousness to embrace the other. This expansion of consciousness, if we could make that a required part of our education. As children, we have it. How do we lose it? We have to understand the process of how we lose it. People are now saying with some validation that it is childhood trauma that prevents us from living this connectivity that we have as children. And then the rational education, too much rationalization of our education does the rest. If we could prevent this, that would be the very, very best thing. But in the absence of that, because that requires very aware parents, in the absence of that, if we have a good education system where teachers don't just teach the 3 R's, which is part of rationality, but 3 I's, these I words are very important: inspiration, intention, and intuition. We have forgotten inspiration, that children need inspiration. What is inspiration? If you inspire another person, momentarily, you and the person become one. That's when we are inspired by a person. You remember the teachers that used to inspire us?
Yeah.
Inspire us have that ability, no? They take us with them. They are thinking in such a way that we are completely one with them. And that's why we feel inspired. Oh, this teacher is inspiring, right? We don't have that anymore in our education. This is the worst thing that has happened to our teachers. They don't inspire because they don't live in a very inspiring society. We have our leaders don't inspire. They take advantage of our fears rather than inspiring us. They would rather push our buttons of entertainment than give us inspiring moments of truth. So in this way, we are very close to losing it. We are losing it because the world actually is enchanted. The world is actually very connected. We are losing it because we are not aware of it. This is why I like the name of your show so much, awareness. That's the basis of everything.
Yeah. And then that's sometimes when you meet some people that are really fully established in that awareness or consciousness, or they that know themselves as that, you could almost feel it, right? It's like there is this energy, there is this inspiration, I guess.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And that's why we go to them. This is why we venerate them. This is why we say, oh, this is a spiritual teacher. A spiritual teacher is one that awakens the spirit in us.
Yeah. And yeah, because I know you also wrote a book, The Quantum Spirituality, where you also kind of put spirituality and quantum physics together. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you.
It's an important concept. I'll just be very brief about it. The usual spirituality is about discovering who we really are. Unfortunately, that discovery takes us away from the ego so much that we don't want to come back to the ego anymore. So such become very aloof to the rest of the world, non-attached. We cannot serve the world if we are so non-attached. Non-attachment is good for spirituality, but it is not good for serving the world, which is very attached to what they are doing. So quantum spirituality is a concept that we discovered by realizing that there is another archetype very close to the oneness archetype, self archetype, that is called wholeness. Wholeness of opposite. We integrate. This is how I have become so much of an integrator. Integrate science and spirituality. Two things that looks oppositional, but when you integrate them, you can see that both are valid in their own way. You don't vilify either one or the other. You see the limitations, you see how we have to join them, how we have to see bringing both of them together, and then they become a integrated system that can help us live. That's the message of that book, Quantum Spirituality.
Yeah, like the wholeness that we already are, that's already here, and it's all of us, anyone, and it's in daily life, right? It's like you don't have to go to a cave, or you don't have to meditate for hours to integrate who you are with life, because it also seems like life is it, right? It's like it's simply life, right?
Yes, that's the present-centered life. If when you said this is the present-centered moment.
Yeah.
That is what people have to achieve, and if we could achieve that, in the present-centered moment, all is integrated, all becomes a whole. The dichotomies disappear, the wrong beliefs fall away. So the more we can be in that expanded consciousness of one-centered, one-pointedness, or whatever we want to call it, that centeredness, present-centeredness is a good term for it. That is really a big answer. And many spiritual teachers teach just that, be in the present. But that, of course, is a very hard concept to actually enact in our life. So we have various methods. And we suggest you go step by step. And that's what led to all these variations of life that we play, that we play on the world stage. And they are important too, because the present-centered moment is left practically out of our reach by the brain. We have to go through that entire pre-conscious, and that is not easy when you think conceptually. Fortunately, there are these quantum leaps, which takes us momentarily to that state. And once you get the taste for it, then you are on the journey, and then sooner or later you find it. But it's usually later. How much later? It takes sometimes incarnation after incarnation to get there. This is why quantum science has discovered that reincarnation is a very viable phenomenon, very important phenomenon. Nothing to worry. These archetypes take a long time to find them and embody them, but that's okay, because we also have a very long time to explore them.
Yeah,
It's
but
not
it's also right here, right now. That's the thing too, right? It's right here, right now for us. So it's like we don't have to reincarnate to know ourselves as true nature. It's now, right? Also, like the quantum, it's here right now as we are. We
It's here
just
right
open our heart.
now. That's a very good way of thinking, Susan. You're completely right. We are just missing it. So we should always have the faith that the reality is always there, right now, right here. It's not somewhere else. It's right here.
Yeah.
I'm just missing it.
Yeah.
And just follow my intuition and try not to miss it. Eventually we find it.
Yeah.
If everyone has this understanding, then we would never have any misgivings in life. Everything goes towards finding that reality in the moment.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Amit. I really appreciate it. And how can people get in touch with you? You have a website?
It is very simple. My website is amitgoswami.org, amitgoswami.org. And if you write to that website, info@amitgoswami.org, we meticulously respond to every piece of communication. So please write to us about information about our university, about anything that I talked about. And thank you, Susan. This was such a wonderful conversation.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you.
Very well.